The concept of undulating versus linear periodization is kind of hard to really pick up, at least in a practical sense, I think inside of most personal training textbooks, and if you guys are following us, probably inside of the NASM CPT. And what I want to do in this video is I want to break down, just make sure you guys understand what the difference is, talk a little bit about how to know which one to use based on where you are as a trainer and where your client is, and then also give you guys just an example of what something might look like or how you would think about undulated periodization, because I think that's the more challenging one. So you guys can see, I already have up here on the board. I know you guys always come to these videos for my artwork, and this is as good as it gets. So hopefully you guys can see some of this. And this is probably similar to what you guys might find inside of some of your personal training texts as well. Just a visualization of undulating versus linear periodization. All right, so one thing you guys got to keep in mind, periodization is all about managing stress over time. And right now we're going to talk primarily about training stress, but don't forget stress in life. There's a lot of things that go into periodization, and there's probably a longer conversation about how much do I really periodize with general population clients who are coming in different days and schedules change, but we'll save that for another video. For now, I want to make sure you guys understand the two. And what it is, it's a way for us to look long term, right, week to week, month to month throughout the year, at how we're changing some of our variables, our acute variables of training, the stressors that we're giving the body. All right, so linear periodization, probably the easiest one initially to understand. You can see on our little graph here, right? On this side, we have volume and intensity. Those are our two lines here. You guys see on both sides, intensity being our red line and volume being our blue line. And with linear periodization, for the most part, right, as you're looking at training phases, and I'll relate this to the OPT model, we have intensity increasing, right? Think intensity, how hard I'm working, the weight that I'm lifting, right? Based on how we gauge and we measure intensity, percentages of 1 rep maxes, that over time that's gonna go up, and inverse relationship, right? Volume is gonna go down. So if we think about this from the OPT model, right? Even thinking about stabilization, thinking about, strength endurance, muscular development, max strength and power, right? Those 5 phases of the OPT model, this is generally how most people probably should start out utilizing it, meaning that what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna slowly, even inside of stabilization, even if you're just looking at one phase and not the whole model, I'm gonna slowly increase intensity, right? Even in stabilization, that might mean I'm gonna start to slowly increase the loads, difficulty of the movement. There's a lot of ways we can look at that. And I'm gonna start to increase or decrease the volume over time. And that might mean that literally linear, I'm gonna follow my primary role, my primary goal, the rep schemes, the rest periods, the tempos are gonna be focused on stabilization, right? 4-2-1 tempo for 4 to 6 weeks. And you'll find a variety, everything from 1 to 6 weeks with certain phases. But if we're thinking linear, for most people, 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks that they're gonna stay in one phase before we move on to the next. And we stay there for 4 to 6 weeks. And then if we deem it's appropriate, we move on to the next. And some people may stay in some phases for a long time, for example, like muscular development. But that's this idea, this concept of linear periodization. And that tends to be best. I think it's best for newer trainers, so that might be you. Mostly because it's easier to think about and plan. Like I know my rep schemes, I know 12 to 20 reps for stabilization, I know my general intensities. If I do that and I try to progress for 6 weeks and then I change the variables to the next one, right, muscular endurance and then muscular development, it's easier to follow. And you're following a pretty logical, good pattern. And the truth is it works, right? Linear periodization has been popular and around for a long period of time. So I think great for new coaches because it's easy to program over time and just strategically change your variables. And they also tend to show, again, lots of research out there on linear versus undulating. It seems to also be probably the best way for most beginner exercisers to start, right? We want to build a foundation because as we dive in, we'll talk about undulating and the change in variables. Well, it's probably not going to be as appropriate to switch between in week 1 for a beginner exerciser, switch between more stabilization and then moving to like strength and power. They just might not be there yet. So the idea is you want to think about linear periodization, great way to establish a training base. And exactly how long that is, honestly, there's probably not an exact number, but for a lot of people, maybe it means minimum, right? Minimum of probably 3 to 6 months, maybe really 12 months or more. And if you guys think back to how you trained, gosh, this is how I trained for years to make my initial strength gains and get used to training. So linear periodization, huge foundation. Undulating, you can see even just from the shape of our graph, right? And I just kind of threw this up here because there's a lot of ways to do undulating periodization based upon the goals. I think it gets a little bit more nuanced. We have a constant variation in volume and intensity. And that variation can come from workout to workout, like I'll show you, meaning inside a given week. If you're training 2 or 3 days in a given week, you may be training in different phases throughout the week, or on a weekly basis where you may have a certain focus for a week or two, and then it varies that way as well. So that undulating periodization, I think it's a little bit more challenging for new coaches to do well without making random workouts, because that's the thing we don't want. We still want there to be some thought process behind why we are varying these different variables. And I think it takes a little bit more time and experience, definitely more so than you guys probably have as you're just getting started as a personal trainer. And you'll find this oftentimes also used, not only intermediate to advanced exercisers, right? They've established a base already, and then this can be very effective at building muscle, building strength and power, but also athletes. Maybe they have a long competitive season and they need to be able to maintain something like strength and power, explosiveness over a long period of time. Well, they can't be training that every single day, especially if they've got games throughout the week. So you may find that type of training where there's like one day that's a little bit more power and speed focused, one day where they're doing a little bit more muscular endurance and hypertrophy, because it's all about maintaining those qualities. So lots of reasons. And what I want to show you guys on the other side, if you have clients that you've been working with for a long period of time, let's say they've been training for 6, 12 months or more, maybe they've been training with you over a long period of time, years, and it's going to happen because you're going to be great, then this can also be a very engaging way to train, right? Think about clients that are training for years, and they may, from their goal standpoint, they might stay somewhere inside of like, muscular development. They want some body composition change, they want to feel great, maybe they want to, put on a little bit of lean muscle mass, very common goals for a lot of people, but we want to keep them engaged on a day-to-day basis. And if the variables always stay the same, sometimes you'll just find for certain clients that can get monotonous as well. So let me show you what I mean. Let's say for the average client, especially undulating, because here's probably the simplest way, if you're going to play around with, either for yourself or for any clients, undulating periodization, here's an easy way of thinking about it. Let's just say the average client training twice a week. If they train 3 times a week, I'll talk about how we can change this a little bit more, but it fits into the same idea, where you may have a primary focus. Doesn't mean every exercise in that entire day has to be at the exact same reps, right? But you might say, okay, day A, let's say it's Monday or it's Tuesday, whatever it is. Our primary goal is going to be kind of this like hybrid between strength and a little bit of muscular development, because we find you can build muscle at lower rep ranges, right? Training for slightly more like max strength capacity. So on those days, you may have your compound moves, maybe your bigger lifts, your 3 or 4 moves that are probably your bread and butter for that workout, or at least 1 or 2, are going to be something like maybe 4 times 6 to 8 reps, right? We're kind of on this lower end of hypertrophy muscular development and right on the higher end of max strength. They definitely play well together there. And so maybe it's going to be primary moves, 4 to 6 reps there. Maybe it's also going to make sense because we're kind of in this strength piece. We're throwing in a couple power movements, right? Meaning maybe we're doing like some hex bar deadlifts, and then we're going right into like 5 to 6 reps of a box jump. Very common way of kind of training this hybrid between strength and hypertrophy into power. All right, we're hitting those fast twitch muscle fibers. So you can see our focus is more there. All right, that's gonna feel very different. Not gonna be as metabolically stressful or demanding as something that's maybe slightly higher repetitions. Again, for that person, maybe they have 2 or 3 days of rest. They come in on Monday, maybe their next day is on Wednesday or Thursday, however they may train. And now it still fits their goals. Now we're maybe on a slightly higher end, higher rep range of our muscular development, right? Kind of blending between, you see hypertrophy and even muscular endurance. This would be a good indication, right? We're kind of taking those phases of the OPT model, and on this day, we're a little bit more like muscular development, max strength, and then on this day, we're a little bit more muscular endurance and muscular development, right? We're playing on both ends, and there are a lot of benefits of doing that, but also an engagement standpoint, how they approach their workout is gonna feel very different on Monday versus Thursday. Even if I did the same exercises, not that I'm saying you should, but even if I did, the workout will feel entirely different. 3 times 12 to 15, this is gonna be a lot more, let's call it like a hypertrophy pump style workout, right? Maybe playing with more tempo work, more time under tension, when here we're just thinking about being strong and explosive. So I like this, and we could even throw in, if there was a third day, we could split it out and it's truly more muscular endurance. We're doing like, 2 sets of like 20, 25 reps of exercises. So from a weekly variety standpoint, it can make the workouts extremely engaging, right? They're kind of changing their focus on Monday versus Wednesday versus Friday, and that can be huge for keeping clients engaged long term. So hopefully this video helped you guys just better understand a little bit of the differences between linear periodization and undulating. Undulating, I think, is probably the more complicated one that you'll learn more about over time. And then also just an idea of like, okay, if I do have somebody who's maybe further along, how could I start to think about integrating undulating periodization into our training programs?